Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikeshendriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swargapavargadvaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namaha Namah Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Monday, the 29th of June, 2015, and we are continuing with a discussion of Madhurya Kadambini, which is a short essay authored by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of our most prominent acharyas in the line of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, in the past few sessions, we started examining the process of devotional service. We first started out with the onset of bhakti. We wanted to understand bhakti and its independent nature. We understood that Sri Bhakti Devi is not even controlled by Krishna. Even Krishna wants to discover Bhakti Devi, or rather the effect of bhakti, and as a consequence, he experiences bhakti as he appears as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's a fantastic account of how bhakti is independent. And in fact, bhakti is found in the hearts of devotees who practice Krishna consciousness, who are devotees of the Lord. And then we went on to look at the different stages of bhakti. We looked at bhakti with Shraddha, and then bhakti where Shraddha is not fully present. In other words, where Shraddha is mixed. It's mixed with either motives for material enjoyment or there are motives for gaining knowledge. And we also looked at the 5 different stages of material suffering, or rather 5 different causes of material suffering. The first cause we looked at was lack of knowledge, lack of understanding who we are, who is Krishna, the relationship between us, and the activities performed in the relationship. Lack of sambandha gyan, as we call it. Sambandha is relationship. The next we looked at the false ego, where we have identified, or rather, we have very closely adopted an identity which is far removed from our identity of being a servant of Krishna. And as a consequence, that identity is exposing us to duality of material nature, and that causes intense suffering. And then we looked at envy, we looked at material attachment. Needless to say, when we get attached, the more attached we are, more we experience distress. And then we looked at envy, which is when attachment does not yield its fruits in the way we wanted it to. And then we looked at further continuance of material activities, or rather engagement in material activities of sense gratification, which is the 5th cause of distress. It is a cause of distress. It is even more painful when you have been given special knowledge, when you have been given entrance into such a special subject matter, which is very confidential and which is so elevated. Then once you are exposed to such knowledge, moving away from such knowledge and engaging in nescience causes great distress. And then we also looked at the 6 different types of anishtita bhakti. We looked at the 6 different types of anishtita bhakti, which is basically the idea of being utsahamai, very enthusiastic. And then let me just grab the book so that I don't miss any as I say it. Yeah. We looked at utsahamai, we looked at ganatharala, which is sometimes enthusiastic and sometimes lethargic. We looked at vyuda vikalpa, doubtful about the process of devotional service. And then we looked at vishaya sangara, where the doubts go away, but then the person has weakness and as a consequence has a tendency to engage in such weaknesses. In other words, there's hridaya durbalya. The person keeps going after material sense gratification, even though the doubts have disappeared because of weakness. Now it's no more a situation of lack of knowledge, it's more a situation of weakness being present and he's not able to overcome such weakness. The power of his practice is unable to suppress the weakness. And the next was unrealistic vows. Niyamakshama. Niyamakshama is unsteady because, someone says, oh, I'm going to chant 64 rounds. It doesn't happen. You see, it happens for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and then the person again falls back to almost nothing because they go from one extreme to the other. So this is again a part of unrealistic vows, and which is the part of anishtita bhakti. Then we looked at the fact that there could be adoration and distinction. And what does it mean? It means that when we perform bhakti, and bhakti has surpassed the doubtful stage, bhakti has surpassed the stage of having attraction for sense gratification, which is Vishesagara. Bhakti has surpassed this extraordinary unsteadiness of unrealistic vows and so on, not understanding what is required and not understanding what is possible. When it has surpassed all of that, there is still this Tarangarangini. What is that? It is simply, you can say, the side effect of performing a higher level of bhakti. And the side effect of performing a higher level of bhakti is one receives fame, one receives wealth, one receives followers. And becoming distracted with those is anishtita bhakti, because now we are distracted with something which is not directly connected to Krishna. In what sense? It is a separated energy of Krishna. It is not Krishna himself. So there cannot be nishtita bhakti when there are such attractions to Krishna's separated energies. Okay, when we get attracted to the 6 different types of qualities of Bhagwan as opposed to Bhagwan himself, then it's a problem, right? Because we are here to serve. And that is the stage of Tarangarangini where it's adoration and distinction. Okay, then in the 3rd shower of nectar, we looked at the process of anartha, nivritti, that which has no meaning, nivritti, freedom from those aspects of our life which have no meaning or no connection to Krishna whatsoever. These are all aspects of our life which have basically lingered on. And then we looked at the causes of anartha nivritti, or rather the causes of anarthas, the causes of anarthas. And the different causes of anarthas, they were given 4 categories. The first category of anartha comes from past sinful reactions. The second category of anarthas come from aparad. Okay, and the third category of anartha comes from pious activities. I'm sorry, the second category is pious. First is sinful activities from the past. Second is pious activities from the past, which starts causing us disturbances. And how is it so? It makes us very complacent. The third cause of anarthas is, it is basically linked to bhakti. How is it so? It is linked to bhakti because there is seva aparad. And then the fourth is aparad due to, Vaishnava aparad and nama aparad. So sorry, third is nama aparad, fourth is seva aparad. So 4 categories of anarthas. Where do they come from? Sinful reactions, pious reactions, aparad towards nama, and the 4th category is seva aparad. And then we discussed this in the previous session, saying that complete freedom from all anarthas is going to occur due to nama. So the 3rd category of aparad due to nama, or rather aparad to nama prabhu, is the most dangerous of the 3. Why? Because that's where your solution is. That's the yuga dharma. And if we were to be taken away from being able to fully concentrate on the yuga dharma, which is to chant the holy names because of offenses committed at the lotus feet of the holy names, then where would we go? What would we do? So that's the difficulty we noticed in the previous session. Now in this session, we're going on to the 4th shower of nectar, right? Before we go to the 4th shower of nectar, I just wanted to share, the first few verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And these verses are also exactly what we described. And we're just going to basically look at those to understand them. And these verses are in the 1st canto and 2nd chapter, verses 17 through 20. I'm just going to read the Sanskrit and the translation, and then we will talk further. Shrunvatam swakataha krishnaha punyashravana kirtanaha hridayantaha stohi abhadrani vidunoti suhrat satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So in this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which and this is something which we chant every day when we practically offer Bhagavatam class. Every Bhagavatam class, we hear this verse: Srinvatam Savakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Now he basically cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart. What is the desire for material enjoyment? Anartha. He cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. What is this urge? This urge starts with Adav Shraddha. He has begun developing an urge to hear the message. So he approaches a Tattvadarshi and surrenders, and then serves the Tattvadarshi and receives help. And Srila Prabhupada talks about the person Bhagavata and the book Bhagavata. So the person Bhagavata is one who is living according to the Srimad Bhagavatam. The book Bhagavatam is what he speaks of. So when we approach such a person who is a Tattvadarshi, who is fully convinced of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, then the urge to hear the message and basically the message itself cleanses the desire for material enjoyment. Okay? Now let's look at the next verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is 1.2.17. Now we are reading 1.2.18. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. So now we are talking about naistiki bhakti or nishta. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Go back to the previous session. We were talking about almost completely destroyed, and non-existence, and so on and so forth of anarthas. What is almost completely destroyed? Almost completely destroyed is prayiki. Prayiki is the name given of different stages of anarthas that are destroyed, right? So we spoke about it in the previous session. Then there was basically Ekadeshavartini, Bahudeshavartini, Prayiki, and then Purna, right? And then Atyantiki. So there were different stages which were given of how the anarthas are going to be removed, or different stages of it. Okay? And in this particular verse, you're talking about Prayiki. This is basically a stage of Nishta, where they're all, almost completely destroyed. Okay? What does this mean in reality? We'll tackle this in a different direction as well. It means that the person is situated at a very, very high level in the modes of nature. But why is the word almost completely destroyed being spoken of? It is almost because the specific level which they're talking about is still in the mode of goodness, but the mode of goodness is still mixed to some extent. Okay? So there's still very, very minute quantities of passion and ignorance that are a part of this particular consciousness. As a consequence, the heart is almost the heart is almost completely cleansed, or rather, whatever is troublesome is almost completely destroyed, is being spoken of. Okay, now let's look at the next one. The next one, which is 19, 1.2.19, Srimad Bhagavatam. Tada rajastamo bhavaha kamalobhadyascha cheteter anaviddam stitam sattve prasiddhati. Stitam sattve prasiddhati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effect of nature's mode of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Now, what was present in the previous verse? Almost completely destroyed. Now, in this particular situation, whatever remnants of the mixed mode is completely removed, and now the person is completely situated in Shuddha Sattva. Okay? Now, Shuddha Sattva is also called the Vasudeva platform, right? Vasudeva platform. How do we say it? It is Vasudeva Sankarshana Anirudh Pradyumna. Vasudeva platform is a consciousness of Shuddha Sattva. So there are three different modes of nature. You have Tamas, you have Rajas, and then you have Sattva. And then one who is situated in Sattva can still experience the modes of passion and ignorance because they are still within the material modes. Okay? Because they're still within the same container of material creation, the modes are mixed even though they are at a very high level in the mode of goodness. You can say it's still mixed. Now, when you cross the mode of goodness and go above That particular level, which is in the spiritual sky, is called Shuddha Sattva. And what do we mean by that? There is no contamination from passion and ignorance. There's no contamination. In that particular consciousness, right, it is also called Atma Ananda. It is also called Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. We use those words as well. In such a consciousness, then that person is able to see Krishna. That is why it's called the Vasudeva platform. What is that platform? That platform is where the material modes are not influencing the person, and the person is able to see Krishna. Okay? Now, what is that level? The level is, goes above the level of Nishta, and it is a progression, and the person is established in Shuddha Sattva. As a consequence, you can say that this is at a high level of, or rather, it is just the entrance of Bhava. Then let's hear 1.2.20 Srimad Bhagavatam. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogatah bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate, thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, Shuddha Sattva. The man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Full knowledge. Positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. He knows who he is, and then he didn't know Krishna fully. He now knows who is he. He knows Krishna. He knows his service. And then that is the stage of liberation from all material association. This is prema. Okay? Full knowledge. What is full knowledge? He is able to see Krishna. He is able to meet Krishna. He is able to have a conversation. Okay? This is 1.2.20. And this is giving you a parallel to what we were talking about from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's rendering, where we were talking about the Ekadasha Vartini, Bahudesha Vartini, and then we were also talking about Praiki, Purna, Atyantiki. Okay, these are different stages. In this particular session, we are going to go into the fourth shower of nectar. I'm just going to open up the question so that I don't miss it if any was there. Okay, now we're going to we are going to go into the fourth shower of nectar. And in the fourth shower of nectar, we are actually going to see what is Nishtita Bhakti. You see, thus far we looked at Anishtita Bhakti. And Anishtita Bhakti is that which is not fixed. We looked at different reasons, then we looked at different stages, and then we also read from the Srimad Bhagavatam, understanding how the parallels are established in different scriptures. And then the fourth shower of nectar by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about obstacles in devotional service that should not be there if one is in Nishtha. So it's almost like negative reasoning, where you're looking at things which are problematic, and then you're saying if they're absent, one is in Nishtha, one is fixed. Okay, it's an interesting way to look at it. So let's look at the different steps. The first obstacle is called Laya. What does it mean? Laya means it is actually feeling sleepy. You cannot feel sleepy if you're fixed while you chant, while you hear, and while you're remembering Krishna. If that symptom comes in when you're healthy, some people could be under duress. Okay, we don't want to condemn people who are under duress because of physical conditions, and their body is making some kind of a demand which is quite abnormal. Here we are talking about people who are able to exert their body in different material activities quite efficiently. But then when it comes to the process of being able to chant, when it comes to the process of being able to read, and then the process of being able to worship, or rather remember, now you have a problem. What is the problem? The person feels sleepy. This is called Laya. Okay? If this is present, understand that we are not fixed. We are not in Nishtha. Now, let's look at what happens. Basically, the reason why this exists is that the body is more active. Okay? That's what this means. It means that the physical aspects of the existence are more active. This person has motivations for enjoyment. It could be sexual enjoyment. Okay? They have motivations. And they have this motivation for gratification of senses by entertaining themselves in activities other than Krishna consciousness. Okay, these are all different symptoms of laya, because these are the reasons why one does not able they're not able to fully focus on Krishna consciousness. It's unsteady. Okay, in other words, these exist, and as a consequence, laya can also occur because this is body consciousness. It is body consciousness where someone feels undernourished, they feel unfulfilled in life, and as a consequence, they want to fill their life with activity which makes them feel fulfilled. In some cases, for example, people overeat. Overeating is again a symptom of wanting to fill some void. Okay, these are psychological symptoms, and there's a physical response, which is overeating. And then we are analyzing it, we are understanding that the person fundamentally also has, tendencies of wanting to engage in, activities related to the body. They're very enthusiastic in wanting to engage in activities related to the body. So when they sit down to chant, you have this tendency of wanting to sleep. And why does this happen? It's because, the person is more situated on body consciousness. This is laya. If this exists, then understand that nishta doesn't exist, because that's the opposite. Okay, one who is in fixed consciousness, who is in love with Krishna, cannot sleep. They cannot sleep while they think of their beloved, unless it's a physical problem where they're sick and the body is overwhelming them. Even then, when they go into deeper levels of consciousness and slumber, they would remember Krishna. Okay, beautiful example I can give you on this fact. Nice example that I just remember now. There was this lady, Mataji, a devotee in, I think, Croatia. And for many, many years, she was serving as a pujari in one of her temples, rendering devotional service, deity worship. She was a dedicated pujari, very dedicated, in terms of attached to the deities, and used to make all kinds of sacrifices to be able to serve the deities. The deities used to be the center of her life, which is what the pujari service is all about, where the deity has to become the center of your life. And at one point, what happened was, she was actually, at a later stage in her life, she developed terminal cancer. She developed cancer, and as a consequence, she was hospitalized. But then, knowing that she was a very sincere servant of Srila Prabhupada and a very sincere servant of the deities, my spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, went to visit her in the hospital, because he was very elevated. The moment he entered into the room in the hospital where she was lying in the bed, he could experience an elevated consciousness. The moment you enter into the room, okay? And this person was sick. And so he began talking to her. And then she started telling him that I miss my deity worship so much. I miss my seva so much, that I'm lying on the bed, I'm sick, but I'm doing a lot of manasika seva, mental worship. I am practically going through the motions of deity worship on a step-by-step basis in a very meditative fashion. And as a consequence, I'm kind of absorbing myself in that, because I cannot really afford to miss the service that I was doing for my deities. So since she was engaging in manasika seva, the internal consciousness of the person was affecting the atmosphere in the hospital. Hospitals are the worst place to be in terms of consciousness. You see? Yeah. They're full of ghosts in hospital. All kinds of entities are in hospitals. Why? Because the consciousness level is very low when people are suffering, because their whole body comes to the forefront. When the body comes to the forefront, everybody's focus is on the body, and they're suffering. And the mode of ignorance draws entities who are of the mode of ignorance. So that's the reason why when you go to a hospital, I'm just telling you as a matter of advice, you're all being trained to be brahmanas, right? To engage in deity worship. Be sure to have a bath and discard every piece of clothing that you've worn. It's very contaminating to be in that atmosphere. Okay? I'm giving you the opposite. I'm giving you the opposite side, where someone with extraordinary consciousness is lying in the hospital bed, but is ill, very ill, but is able to elevate their absorption in Krishna to such an extent that they are influencing the environment. Okay? So I'm giving you an example where if someone is really absorbed, the body cannot interfere. So sleeping, if you're going to be chanting, sleeping while remembering Krishna, sleeping in class, all of these are symptoms that there's a problem. It is not Nishta. It's the opposite. It is Anishta. See, that lady, even her body did not disturb her. That's the beauty. That is fixed consciousness. Someone who is so fixed that even advanced cancer could not bother her absorption and manasika seva to the deities. Now, the next thing which is being given of what is not fixed, symptom. You see, external symptoms are very easy to spot, and therefore it's better when we want to really calibrate and put ourselves and measure our progress. Speaking or thinking of mundane nonsense. This is called vikshepa. Mundane nonsense goes on through the day. Agreed. But devotees carry mundane nonsense and have discussions in the temple when they're supposed to be fixing themselves on something else. They have discussions at the back of the room. They have discussions while class is going on. They have discussions during japa sessions, okay, of mundane nonsense. This is vikshepa. There cannot be any attraction to mundane nonsense when there is nishta. Remember that, okay? I remember there's something funny was when we were all receiving second initiation from Guru Maharaj. The way he gave us our thread was, he used to do it a little personally, where he used to meet each and every one of us individually, and then he used to put the thread around our shoulders, just as a father would. It was his style, just as a father would, because I was initiated by my father first, and then I was given the Gayatri by him, and then the father puts the thread around the shoulder and then whispers the mantra. So my Guru Maharaj did the same. He called one by one. And then he had a group meeting of all the second initiates. And he was talking about, Gayatri. And then when he was talking about Gayatri and, the importance and so on and so forth, he was actually wanting a Q&A, right? So there was a question, which was pretty nice. But at the same time, the response was even better. So the question was, Maharaj, which direction are we supposed to face? Some people say that you have to face a certain direction. Should we face east? Should we face west? So on and so forth. What is considered to be auspicious? So Guru Maharaj replied, saying, I have no problem with any direction as long as you're not facing the TV. Okay? And he replied this, and he just laughed, and everybody burst out laughing. Okay? Because the relationship which we all had was, he basically had this idea of joking, and he used to joke. And he just made everybody laugh. The person who asked the question just made a face, which is also the personal bond of the devotee with the spiritual master. But anyways, so the point which we wanted to make was that this whole vikshepa of mundane nonsense doesn't exist when there is nishta. One cannot enjoy material nature. It's great suffering. Okay, you cannot be flipping through channels. You cannot be doing that if there is nishta. You cannot, because there will be urgency. There would be this need to wanting to understand the beloved more and more. There would be a need to manage time. You really won't be engaging in vikshepa, which is mundane nonsense. And this also includes prajalpa, okay, which is probably the topic which is going to talk about next, a couple of points later. The third obstacle is called apratipati. Apratipati is when both laya, which is feeling sleepy, and vikshepa are absent. Okay, the person is not feeling sleepy while they're coming in touch with devotional service. They are really not distracted by mundane nonsense, right? But there is this apathy or indifference. They are still not able to move forward, even though these two things are not bothering them. They have this sense of, I can't do this. Or there's a sense of failure, okay, where they have such lowest self-esteem. These are more deeper issues that I can't do this. It's beyond me. I really wouldn't be able to continue this further, and so on and so forth. So in those cases, they believe that everything depends on them, and in such a situation, they don't believe that Krishna is also going to allow them to make progress based on their effort. In other words, when we start thinking that everything is fully dependent on us, that can be a stage where we could get overwhelmed thinking that, oh, I can't handle this. But here, that's also a symptom of anishtita bhakti. You see, anishtita bhakti. Next week when we talk, not next week, next session, we will talk about some deeper aspects of surrender, what happens. But then this particular session, in this particular situation, we are really talking about someone who is not distracted so much by material energy. They are not sleepy because they are not so body conscious to such an extent that the body is taking over and forcing them to shut down, right? But in this situation, there's apathy, and this has more of a psychological, mental issue where they feel that they are not, going to be able to make it. They're not going to be able to move forward. There's no intensity. In other words, they stop putting in a lot of effort. There's no intensity. Okay, and that is called apratipati. Okay, why is it so important? Because when you approach Nishta, there will be a lot of greed. There will be a lot of greed. Okay, and as a consequence, you really cannot be indifferent. You cannot have apathy, and that is apratipati. Now, the fourth obstacle is called kashaya. Kashaya is where we display anger, greed, arrogance. When these big problems do come forth, understand that there is a serious problem and Nishta is not present. Okay, anger, greed, arrogance. There is no Nishta. It cannot come. Okay, it doesn't fit in. It's not a part of the picture. And in such a situation, basically, we have to be able to monitor ourselves. We have to really monitor ourselves to see if we are exposing ourselves and rather projecting such consciousness where there's anger or there's something which is called, greediness, or there's arrogance. Arrogance due to knowledge, arrogance due to some accomplishment, arrogance due to who we are based on, sthana, position. All of these are a part of the anishtita platform, and this is called kashaya. What happens in this particular situation? Anger, greed, or rather arrogance, we're ill-treating devotees. Okay, and we're also coming in with a consciousness to serve Krishna, which is contaminated. We could be going through a lot of things in life, but even if you're going through a lot of things in life, when these particular sentiments of anger and so on and so forth dominate your head, then it means that there is a real problem. One is not basically able to fix themselves. Why is it so? Because the fixing part is such that one does not experience any suffering. See, once the what do you call it, kleshagni takes place, where all the kleshas are completely burnt away, there is no suffering. Then if one knows some person is not suffering, where is the question of anger, greed, and arrogance? There is no question of anger, greed, and arrogance when one is not suffering, isn't it? Why would someone become angry? Because they don't have material attachments. So at this stage, what is the situation? The situation is that they could be going through a lot of intensity, but in Nishta, it doesn't affect them. It really doesn't affect them. So like the lady, the Mataji which we spoke of, who's lying in the hospital bed, obviously going through tribulations, but is still able to project higher level of consciousness, is able to serve the deities in the mental platform. And the most important point I would like to mention in that regard is Nishta, you can recognize it when your mind is completely, it can be calmed down. Once you begin chanting, it immediately comes to a complete stillness. It does not give you trouble. Okay, understand that. That's again a symptom. That is an internal symptom. We're going to talk about it in the next session, right? But the external manifestation, this person will not be, they would not be acting in a manner which is, with anger and greed and arrogance and all those things. So this is like a seva aparad. And, we also understand that temple environment specifically, if we find that there are serious problems in a temple, one should immediately go and start examining the prasadam that's being cooked. One should. Because if there are serious problems, especially if people are staying in the temple, or one should go home and start looking at what they're doing when they're cooking prasadam. Cooking bhoga. Because the contamination of the cook has a tendency to reach the food which is being prepared. And if it is contaminated, Krishna is not going to accept it. And then we accept the contamination, and then there's mass pollution of consciousness. Okay? So this again kind of brings a principle that if you're going to be engaging in seva, especially cooking service for the deities, if you're going to be engaging in deity worship, be very, very careful, because now you are in a position to affect the consciousness of many, many people. And the weight of making mistakes is very high. Okay? I'm not trying to put fear. I'm just merely asking you to be cautioned. I'm just kind of requesting precaution. The deities don't accept everything that we offer. They do not. They reject, especially if it's been cooked with a lot of lower qualities. They just reject. Simple food, simple in terms of fewer preps, simple in terms of the richness or the lack thereof. That is perfectly acceptable for the deities, as long as it's cooked in the proper mood. So in other words, one can be poor and cook a simple meal, but it should be offered very carefully to the deities and to the Vaishnavas. If we don't do that, then we are actually contaminating hundreds of people. And when you do that in a temple atmosphere, the temple atmosphere does become non-conducive. It becomes non-conducive. Why? Because the most important features of temple atmosphere are deities and prasadam, right? People come there to visit the deities, and then they honor prasadam. Then they hear kirtan, so on and so forth. So one who is taking up cooking service and deity worship specifically, and you're cooking for the deities, one has to be chanting nicely before you go there, paying attention and understanding that no matter what nonsense we go through, at that point in time, learn to focus, sit there, beg for mercy, chant the Narasimha Pranam so that he is able to help us, clear our nonsense from our heart, and then we're able to, engage in proper service. Because this is a fact of life. Temple organizations and basically even communities, they get impacted by prasadam, okay? Because you're giving prasadam, and Krishna has to accept it. So it's a very important feature for us to be able to work on ourselves before entering the kitchen, work on yourselves before doing everything, okay? I've seen many, many cases of Srila Prabhupada disciples in the past, in New Vrindavan, in Gitanagari as well, and where the prasadam is so tasty, and because it's being cooked with a lot of affection. It's being cooked with a lot of affection. And sometimes you notice that even the cooking is on a large scale. It's not for a small group of people. It's on a large scale. And even if it's on a large scale, you still find that it is very tasty. You feel that Krishna has accepted it, and so on and so forth. Why are we saying this? We are saying this because these are very powerful tools of our trade, so to speak. When we create a proper atmosphere and ambience for outsiders to come in, when we feed them prasadam, which has been cooked with great care, and as a consequence, there's a lot of potency, we are practically engaging in preaching, because we are silently affecting the consciousness of whoever comes in touch with such prasadam. So that's why it's very, very important to pay attention to such seva. It's critical seva, so to speak. Okay? It is critical. So acting with the wrong consciousness is kashaya. And then attachment to sense pleasure. This is the fifth obstacle. Attachment to sense pleasure is rasasvada. Some people, when they sit down and they pick up their beads, the images that come into their mind has to do with sense gratification. Why? Because there's so much absorption in the past in sense gratification that those images keep coming up. This is a state where Nishta is not, it's not there. It's not there, okay? So we spoke of 5 different stages, right? 5 different states, I would think, where you can say that Nishta is not there. Laya, lethargy, sleepiness during the process of engaging in devotional service. One in Nishta will not be sleepy. No way. Even if they are ill, they would be able to fix themselves, because the mind, which is inside the physical self, which is a separate component, now the mind has become free of anarthas. So even if the physical environment is contaminated, rather the body, the mode of ignorance is increased in the body due to sickness, the internal consciousness still remains intact, and the person is able to engage in service. Laya means if you're sleepy while you're chanting, understand that Nishta is not there. And then the second obstacle is vikshepa. engaging in talking and engaging in discussing mundane nonsense in an atmosphere which is, which is designed for us to be able to move forward. So the person is in an atmosphere of Krishna consciousness, an atmosphere of basically, and like the temple room and so on and so forth. And the person is attracted to engaging in nonsensical talk. Okay, no nishta there again, and then feeling incapable. Feeling incapable is a lack of faith in one sense, because they are not completely dependent on Krishna. They are thinking it's all dependent on them. There's low self-esteem. So the mental weakness is coming forth and not allowing them to develop greed, to move forward. Greed is where you want more even though you're not qualified. Okay, that is the quality which comes up. Well, I'm not qualified, but I want more. I thank you for what's been given, but I'm asking for more. Okay, that is greed. Acting with the wrong consciousness, kashaya, where we said distinctly there are problems in consciousness, which means we are reacting to the environment we are in, then there's a problem there as well. And then we spoke of attachment to sense pleasure, which is the fifth obstacle. And the fifth obstacle to firm and undeviating devotion is being attracted to sense pleasure. Being attracted to sense pleasure. Okay? So I am going to stop here, and I'm going to see if you have any questions. No questions? I'm surprised. All right, I'm just going to probably wait for 10 seconds and then we'll sign off. All right, thank you very much for attending the session. If there are any questions, please feel free to write to me. So the website is back up again, so please feel free to even correspond with me. My email address is available there. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.